This is advanced composition that we're dealing with today. It is going to explode your creativity and your outlook on everyday photographs. Hey dphog, today we're going to talk about composition. In the previous 3 episodes, we spoke about using foreground objects to help you compose. We spoke about maximizing the frame, changing your angles and using the space that you have in the frame, and using frames and leading lines. These are all relatively basic concepts that far too many people ignore. These are concepts that you really need to know. When you know the technical basics, it becomes part of your voice. You don't have to consciously apply yourself to use these elements within your photograph. And that's what this episode is about. It's about inflicting your own voice and your brushstroke on the canvas. Now, this is relevant to anyone who's ever entered into the discussion of whether photography is to be considered as art. And it frustrates many photographers that they don't feel they're getting due respect for what they're doing. So let's take it back to the basics and let's be honest and say that a camera is a piece of science. You are capturing light through a lens on an emulsion, which then eventually translates into a print. So that's very scientific over there. This up here is where the art will come into your work. Now, marrying what you've got going on up here with this scientific box is what will make your work unique. I'm going to get straight into it. We were at Friendship Garden in Sydney, and where we left off in episode 3, I said that we would get here to Friendship Gardens and have a look at some of these images. Now, this is more cerebral than what it is technical. This is where your brushstroke, your mind comes into creating compositions. And I'm going to get straight into the first image that we're looking at here of the shadow of this pine tree etched on the limestone rock. When I got there, it's a tourist attraction, so there are too many people to really get good individual personalized images. And the background to Friendship Garden in Sydney is the city, the buildings. But nonetheless, when you get into a situation, you need to give enough care and detail to an image to actually execute something that puts your own stamp on it. For me, the pine tree in Eastern culture is revered as a symbol, an object that withstands the harshest winters. And I think the idea, because I was forced to look elsewhere for the photograph, the idea of this symbol of permanence being etched onto a rock, for me became so much more powerful than simply aiming the camera around and trying to avoid people and getting a picture of a tree. It would have been nothing for me. So there's lesson number 1 then, is not to always see an image at face value. The composition, when you look at something immediately, doesn't have to lie where it is there. It can be something abstract, which I found when I turned the camera down to the rocks on the ground and had a look at how the light and the shadow was playing over there. And I think that's the basis for this whole episode or exercise in composition, is just using your mind and looking past the obvious composition that's in front of you to extract something that's more personal out of the composition. Now, that'll go anywhere to what I call, and I've heard other people call it, so it's not me coining a phrase or anything, but it's just don't shoot the postcard. We've all seen the postcard before. You see too much of that, and that gets lost in a sea of imagery. As you can see here, this is the postcard shot of, and it's not a very good postcard shot, I just shot it to illustrate a point though, whereas the next image over here, I had to walk around for a while. I had to consider foreground objects. I don't consciously consider those anymore because I've internalized those lessons, but you have to go and search for the good photograph. And I think this is a really excellent example of that. Moving for a moment outside of Friendship Gardens and going back to the bridge, here's another example of the postcard image. Then one or two examples of looking for different compositions, something that's unique to your mind. And when I say unique, it doesn't necessarily mean it's never been created before, but maybe it's lesser seen. The bridge is a good example of it. And here's another example, the Opera House. I didn't want to go and research my subject extensively before the time because I wanted to be swept away by what I saw in front of me. So I ignored the fact that these are supposed to be sails, as in the vision of the original architect. And when I got there, it was a stormy evening, and I saw these angry conquistadors or Swiss soldiers that were jutting out into this angry sky. I was quite happy to get images like this that I haven't seen on a postcard somewhere before. I think all of these elements just help to make your work your own and to make it a little bit more personal and a little bit more enjoyable. The last thing that I want to talk about is giving enough consideration to what to include in an image and what to exclude in an image. And I found this to be a very interesting lesson when using a wider angle lens. Now, most of the pictures that you've seen are shot on a 35mm lens, and I found it quite challenging to be able to be precise enough and exclude the information that I didn't want in the picture. A lot of the times when traveling through the city, I found it necessary to use a much longer lens, probably an 80, well, obviously I used an 85mm, but I mean, if you've got something like a 24-105 or something in that range, you'll probably want to be using the longer range of the lens to be able to exclude certain details that break the harmony of the image for you. That's where these few examples of architecture are going to, is that while you're on a busy street, you also have the ability to, again, inflict your own brushstroke. I'm not saying these are the greatest pictures or the most correct pictures or anything like that. It's just inflicting my own vision of these shots. Wanted a longer lens from me so that I could clean the image up because there was just too much information in the image. Now, having said that, please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about taking street photography and turning it into something else. Street photography is something completely different to what I've been showing you over here. In street photography, yes, you want information and you want more story and you want the grit, the grime, the interest, the characters and all of those details in your work. So let's just make that distinction and tell you that I'm not talking about that at all. dphog, I hope this has been of value to you. I hope that it can just help seeing, I think, almost a pet project. I always speak to photographers, and when they say they're struggling with their creativity, and I say, just find those few projects. You don't have to be too precious about them initially to start off with, but some of them you'll grow to love and to enjoy. And I think this is one of mine, is excluding elements from a frame and finding elegance within the chaos. Until next time, please do subscribe, please do tell your friends about us. We'd really appreciate that, and we'll see you in a few days.